So we've got quite a packed schedule today. So I'm only going to talk for a couple of slides to give a little bit of background, and then I'm going to hand over to a number of speakers to give an overview of what's going on in the world and some tools and some forward-looking about what might happen next. Okay. So yes, so I'm Brian Matthews. I'm from STFC in the UK, where I work in scientific computing, and we work very closely with our two photon and neutron facilities, the ICIS neutron source and the diamond light source. As I said, this seems a very appropriate time, particularly as over the last few years here in Europe, there's been two significant projects. The EXPAND project, which is the one I've mostly been working with, and the PANOS project, which we've collaborated with very, very closely, both of which have had the theme, or one of their major themes has been working towards fair data. And they've both had significant work packages on fair data specifically, and then throughout their program, the activities are trying to work towards fair data. And particularly they were looking at reviewing the policies, recommendation, practices, standards, and tools for that. So we can guide our services to support fairness. So the overall goal, if you've just been through my previous talk, you might have seen this before, is to get the most out of our facilities experiments by getting faired. So we can have verifiable and reusable science. We're a big part of the science community, so we need to contribute our own fairness, but also for the benefit of facilities themselves who want to get the best out of their science, get the best out of the public investment in those facilities. And we have facilities tend to have a reasonably well-defined process of how people progress and do their experiments through facilities. So the idea is we want to be able to construct fair data as it goes through one of those facilities experiments. So that gives us a framework to work with. And EXPAND, we've been looking at building a fair framework, which has had a number of components like this, provide a toolkit, a framework for fair. So we've looked at data policy, we've looked at metadata frameworks, persistent identifier, data management plans, and fair self-assessment. So that's all there, ready. What we're doing at the moment, there's an awful lot of information there if people want to look it up. There's lots and lots of deliverables in both PANOS and EXPAND on these areas, which is all available, but there's actually quite a lot of it. So what we're doing at the moment is, what's that going forward to that one, is producing a fair data handbook, kind of distilling it down to the essentials. And we're going to produce that as a Git book. It's partly through preparation at the moment. It's not finished yet, hopefully within the next couple of months, but we'll publish that and make that available. And that will kind of guide you through this morass of information. So I'm not going to go through that in detail. What we're going to do today is sort of have some snapshots of bits of that framework, and also comparisons of what's happening elsewhere in the world. We have some talks from the US, for example, and then finish up with some things about what kind of things are happening next. Hopefully, a bit of time at the end to have a discussion about what we might do in RDA, or how we might collaborate outside RDA in these various projects. Okay, so this is the agenda. We have talks in the US from Lynn and from John Taylor. John Taylor's online, so I hope he's there, and he'll be presenting remotely. And then Marcus talking about Germany, and then we have three short talks on various sort of bits of technology, and then finally Patrick and Majid are going to talk for the end. So thanks to unfortunately Alejandra and Sophie, who were scheduled to speak in two sessions, weren't able to come. So thanks to Steve and Patrick for stepping in at relatively short notice to give those talks. So thank you to them. Okay, so I'm going to shut up then now and pass over to our first speaker, which is Lynn. Right, we have to work out how to do this. I lost the pointer. Sorry about this. We kind of been. That's right, isn't it? Yes. Here.
Yeah.
Hurrah! Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. I'm Lynn Pouchard from Brookhaven National Lab in the US, and we have many experimental facilities. We have a synchrotron, we have the first relativistic heavy ion collider, which is still in operation, and now we are the site of the EIC, which is electron ion collider also, and that's a plan, but it's going to be there. So first, I would like to talk about this DOE Integrated Research Infrastructure Blueprint activity. This is like a new Department of Energy priority for 2024. So there's been like a year of planning for this report. And it's been, so all the Office of Science within the DOE are involved. It's initiated by the Advanced Scientific Computing Research. It involves biology and environmental research, which is these acronyms at the bottom, basic energy science that deals with materials, BER deals with biology and environment, fusion, energy science, nuclear physics, and high energy physics. So the vision is to empower researchers to meld DOE world-class tool infrastructure and user facilities seamlessly, securely in novel ways to radically accelerate discovery and innovation. So the idea behind this is like since users actually present their sample and characterize them in different facilities, is trying to come up with an infrastructure so across all the facilities in the US, so that they would not have to re-authenticate, for instance, or learn a whole new way of doing things for data and compute at the same time, and as well as facilitate the connections between the experimental facilities and the high performance computing resources that are also considered DOE facilities for near real-time analysis. And there's also a need for resources for merging enormous and diverse data for AI ML technique and analysis. So trying to have like as much as possible connections between the high performance computing facilities that exist and the experimental facilities. And the only one that is actually really realizing that at a more which is pioneering that is the XFEL at SLAC, which is at the bottom of the Bay Area, and they managed to send their data to NERSC, which is at the top of the Bay Area, and do the round trip in about 25-30 minutes, depending on the experiment and the analysis that's doing, and that's actually working. And if you're interested in learning more about this, there's this report, and there's also like an excerpt which is only a couple of pages, and there was a recent conference about it where you get more details. So the question is that behind this experiment, so right now it's still in the planning mode. So they are planning to bring out some funding to make this more of a reality than it actually is. And of course, if there's no funding that's going to be allocated for this, and none of it is going to happen, as we know. And in order to research and come up with this blueprint of activities, there were a lot of interviews conducted in 2 stages for all the US facilities, and also they also included the CERN. And what they came up with was like 3 science patterns, time-sensitive patterns that have the urgency and require a real-time analysis, as well as a end-to-end performance, like the one I just mentioned for XFEL and NERSC. A second type of pattern, so depending on the experiment, is a data integration intensive patterns that require combining and analyzing the data from multiple sources, sites, experiments, and computational runs. And finally, long-term campaign patterns that require sustained access to resources, but also able to move through workforce changes through these long campaigns. 6 practice areas that are being emphasized as of interest: the user experience practice, with ensuring that the user's perspective and needs are being answered or at least heard. Some resource cooperation practices of creating new modes of cooperation. Cybersecurity and federated access, and that's quite important to be enabled, like that, for instance, a researcher who wants to analyze samples or characterize samples at Argonne and Brookhaven don't have to go through again the intaking process. Workflows, interfaces, and also APIs, and scientific data lifecycle practice, focus on ensuring that users can manage their data properly. So candidate work streams at first, and a test bed. So system level open component and stack linkage, and that also includes the analysis packages, as well as the packages that enable the transfer from an experimental facility to the high performance computing facility and back, and also potentially to storage with all the HPC infrastructure behind it. Federated ID and authentications. Some data transfer is done through Globus, which has been in the US for 20 plus years and went through many iterations. Software deployment, portability, and containerization, human-machine interfaces, and data sharing policies. So now I'm going to pivot and give you a little bit of insights on what is planned with these new opportunities only for specifically for the light sources. So the integration of the advanced computational infrastructure would play a key role. And I highlighted the one that concerns us the most: widespread increased interest in data interoperability and in fair data and open data. So fair adoption of FAIR at facilities has been very much ad hoc. So for instance, data retention policies and data access policies at all the different facilities in the US are not harmonized. So some places say they will keep your data once it's analyzed for 6 months, and after that, that's it. You have to basically get your data on your hard drive, and walk home with it or fly with it. Now, NSLS2, which is the National Synchrotron Light Source 2 at Brookhaven Lab, they also have that policy, although they say they have never thrown anything out. So that's, helpful. But then again, we're going to have like the deluge of data is going to be so hard. They're going to have to come up with some retention policies. So at the APS, the Advanced Photon Source, which is at Argonne, with Argonne National Lab, they have a data lifecycle management focused on Globus, with data transfer and storage on HPC user end. Some technique beamline tailored for web portals to view and search the data and rerun data processing. And there are portals for a number of beamlines, as well as crystallography, and enabling data sharing through Globus, mining digital object identifiers via the Material Data Facility and the DOE OSTI tools, OSTI. A lot of this is still very, very ad hoc, and also there is always a big burden on the user. That is, and typically you can get as much as you can, as we were discussing earlier in the previous session. with Brian is you can get as much metadata as you want from the user before the beamline opens, but from the moment they've been approved and the moment that they actually have their experiment, they forget about it totally. And there's so many pressures on scientists anyway that bringing this into a formalized method after the fact is not really an option. I mean, you can bring incentives, but it's just very difficult to actually get them to do it. So this effort is at National Synchrotron Light Source 2 at Brookhaven Lab, and it's a data service, tiled data service for data access that is still under rapid development, but used in production at NSLS 2 for over a year. It's also used at NIST, ALS, which is at Berkeley Advanced Light Source, and APS, which is the Advanced Photon Source at Argonne. It's secure. I mean, a big problem about making all these federated access is to go through the whole process of making this secure and convincing the IT teams of each lab that this is actually going to be possible, because they don't want to do it. And then it's because there are legitimate security concerns about this. So this system, the tile data service, has passed through a targeted cybersecurity penetration test. So it's going to be possible. There is an emphasis on a fixed set of well-defined structures, which will make the further development tractable. This is my last slide. So in particular, it will be possible to slice with files, transcoding of formats, and will be useful for the integrated research and infrastructure. Thank you. You what? No, that was my last slide, so that's not a problem.
Where's the microphone?
Oh,
Please use the microphone. I think you've lost the microphone.
I don't want to lose.
Ah, right. Any quick questions?
So on your second or third slide, you said that there is a kind of a trend to go into open data and fair data, but you didn't elaborate on where this is coming from. Is this government push, or is this community?
It's coming from the top.
It's coming from.
Also, you have people at the bottom.
They do.
Especially people in IT, or not IT, but also in the software development for the light sources and for the instruments. Some of them are trying to bring more fair data. For instance, there was at Brookhaven, they were trying to get the researchers to require them to put an ORCID ID in their metadata. But it's still optional. So
Okay.
it's like it comes from
Small steps.
sides, but at the same time, the facilities have had, especially the experimental facilities, have been so independent for so long. I mean, in computational science, there's been a lot more collaboration and cooperation. I think it's the nature of the science, really.
So is it from the government? Is it more incentive or punishment? So is it an incentive to do it, or are you punished if not?
No, it's always more incentives,
okay,
rather than punishment. The only punishment would be like that you don't get the next grant, for instance.
That's what I mean.
Right, but they're never going to do that for fair.
Okay.
They might do that if your science is bad, or for whatever reason you mismanage the money, but for fair, no,
okay.
I don't think so. Like, for instance, all people have all data management plans that are required, and nobody ever cares about
them. Right.
Right.
Thank you.
Unfortunately.
Thank you. Thank you, Lynn. So now we're going to try and have John Taylor, who's joining us from SNS in Oak Ridge. I think, John, that the best, if you can share your slides and then you can control them, that might be the best thing to do.
Okay, I'll go in. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, I think we can hear you. Yeah.
So I go into presentation mode. Do you see the right slides or do you see the presenter view?
I think it's the right slide. Yes, it's slightly smaller than I expected, but I think it's okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, yeah,
Over to
okay. Okay, so I've got a short talk. First, I'd like to thank Brian for organising this session. This is an important topic for research infrastructures. So thanks, Brian, for organising this at the RDA meeting and also for inviting us to come along and talk about what we're doing. My name is John Taylor. I'm the Division Director for Neutron Scattering at Oak Ridge National Lab, and I'll give some brief kind of intro into what we're doing for the neutron facilities at Oak Ridge, a lot in line with what you've just heard. So there's a kind of introduction. Obviously, data management is a big part of what we do. It's an important thing for our user community. As you just heard, in the US, there's a lot of uptick in activities. There's the IRI, the Integrated Research Infrastructure that you've just heard about from Lena. And the other thing which is also coming on the horizon is something called the High Performance Data Facility, which is going to be co-located between Jefferson Lab and Lawrence Berkeley Lab in California. And all of these things have FAIR and data management at the heart of what we're trying to do. So I'm going to give you in the landscape of things to come, I'm going to give you what we currently have on the floor in an operating facility. Those facilities at Oak Ridge look like this. It's the spallation neutron source, which is the world's highest power spallation source of neutrons. Currently operating at 1.7 megawatts, but we're currently upgrading it to operate at 2 megawatts. And the high flux isotope reactor, which is a multi-mission system with 12 neutron instruments, which is the highest flux of thermal neutrons on the planet. So altogether, we're talking about 30 state-of-the-art neutron beam lines with large community operating over 1,200 research experiments per year with around 2,000 visits onto site or remotely. So it's a big operation, a lot like a light source, complementary science areas. So our kind of drivers, we have this complex research workflow, I think, which many people will be aware of, starting with a proposal and ending in a publication. Like I've just said, we do a lot of experiments, and all the experiments are different. So that is a data challenge in and of itself, and we cater to a community which is very diverse in experience and research area. So UX, or user experience, is very important. And those users, they ask those questions: where's the data? How do I get it? How do I look at it? What does it mean? And crucially, is it correct? Because that is a real challenge in all kind of experimental science, is understanding the data and making sure that the data is actually correct. Our challenges then is kind of summarized on this slide. There's the different modalities of neutron scattering experiments, going from neutron imaging to neutron spectroscopy. There's many different instruments in those experimental modalities, and you can see from the pictures that the data, those types of experiments are all very different. So there's a variety of different experiments being undertaken. In terms of volume, neutron sources, because there are simply less neutrons than there are photons in a light source, we don't necessarily have the same volume challenge as some of the light sources have, but we do nonetheless take around 0.6 to 1 petabyte of data per year at the spallation neutron source and HIFA together over a variety of different file formats, mostly HDF5 containers, but also TIFF and also ASCII. Human readable kind of XY error type of data, and you can see that's the generation of data at the spallation neutron source since it started in 2006. It's going up, and the gradients there are changing as we upgrade the facility. So volume is a challenge for neutron sources as well as light sources. In terms of our velocity, we have a similar kind of challenge. to meet there. That plot on the right is showing the number of data files stored to disk in our storage system per day since the beginning of operation at SNS, and you can see we have some peaks there. About we're storing 4,000 individual files a day on average when we're in operation. We do a lot of operando and kinetic measurements. We use at SNS and HIFA something called event mode data collection, where all the neutrons are tagged with a time. So you can filter the raw data on the metadata, which obviously means you have to store the metadata as well. So it's a real challenge for velocity. In terms of our current research data management, then we have some current capabilities. We take FAIR seriously. We collect metadata and raw data together. We store it in a common data format, Nexus, which is the light source neutron data format. We keep a good metadata catalog for our raw data, and we give our users the possibility to share their data with DOIs generated for specific data sets. The challenges, there is a challenge in the US facilities on coming or generating a standard data policy. That's not how our facilities interact with our user community. It's a very different mode to the European mode. So there is there is a need, obviously, for having a policy for data. Retention and embargo is an essential part of that, and that's actually quite a challenge in the way that we operate. Along the lines with all the other facilities, capturing metadata that's rich and is well understood is a challenge because of the variety of the experiments and the diversity of the community. So that is an onward going challenge. We have the ongoing challenges, I think, are the same everywhere else. We have a cost of implementation, obviously. It's worth noting that the White House issued a memo in last year saying that by 2025, all publicly funded research should be made open. So eventually that is very similar to the way things are proceeding in Europe, and there's also a cost of implementation for managing that in a sensible and achievable way. The last point there is something that is always important, is how to reward researchers for producing fair data and making their data open. That's simply something that has to happen for there to be a movement for it to become the norm. So in the mnemonic of FAIR, we have findable data by PI and experiment team. We catalog and make all of that catalog open to the experimental team, provide data and data services in a remote way for our users. Accessibility is granted to the PI and the experiment team on a per experiment basis, and that access is managed via our integrated proposal tracking system, which is very similar to many other facilities. And we have a central compute system which we give our users access to. In terms of making things interoperable, we use a common data format, which goes some way to make it useful, and we engage in quite a lot of community science modality, community-driven activities. Kansas is a good example of that. That's a small angle scattering community which tries to provide interoperability across the different types of small angle scattering experiment, neutrons, light sources, and etc. And there are some others there going along in a common, in that common view. We provide some resources and software development into some community delivered codes. SASView is a small angle scattering code. GSAS2 is one of the two large open source read-felt refinement codes for crystallography, for example. And in terms of reusability, that's something which we are moving on. I don't think we're where we want to be quite yet. We allow recently our users to develop or generate custom DOIs for data sets. They get shared and pushed onto the Office of Science and Technology website as DOIs. So that is our mode for providing our users the capability to share their data. We have no a priori policy on mandatory data sharing or mandatory embargoes. See my previous comments on the challenges of data policy and the way that we operate. So just along the lines of future perspectives, as the complexity of our kind of research and the needs from our community grow, research data management is now viewed as a kind of essential capability for all of the facilities, and that goes across all of the facilities that BES operate, the Basic Energy Office of Basic Energy Science, which is 2 neutron sources, 5 light sources, and 7 nanoscience centers. Obviously, that's a very big portfolio, and then the mission to provide research data management is a big one, and it's a real challenge. And the IRI, high performance data facility, and etc. That they're things which have been put in place because they recognise the need in the community for these things to be done. For our future considerations here at Oak Ridge, we want to catalogue all of our process data and our results in the same way we catalogue our raw data. We do want to develop data management plans as a way of managing our own compute portfolio and making that available to the user community at the right time. That requires a considerable development of our own underlying architecture, and that has to increase as well. We are recently coming very close to bringing an instrument online called Venus, which is a time-of-flight neutron imaging machine that will be running a Timepix3 type detector, so it will produce a very large amount of data in a very short period of time, which requires its own, provides its own challenges. And then we do need to develop our data policies. That's something which we are needing to work with our sponsor on, and that is essential to enable the activities. Intersect is something which I haven't really mentioned, but it's a Oak Ridge National Lab internal project to integrate our capabilities, experimental capabilities with compute capabilities that we have on the lab and the integrated research environment. And that is my final slide. There's some acknowledgements, obviously. There's a lot of people working on this at Oak Ridge, and there are some names, and also some of the things that I've worked on in the past in Europe. Thank you very much, and again, thanks, Brian, for the opportunity to speak.
John, any questions? Any quick question for John?
Yes, thank you so much for all this very informative presentation. And one of the challenges that you said you encounter with FAIR is that in the community, people tend to have the view that FAIR equates open science, which of course we know it doesn't, but I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about this challenge and how we could potentially overcome that.
So yeah, that is a real issue, actually. When you say FAIR to people, they assume that it is open. You're talking about open data, which you are not. That is a kind of education. Well, education solves that problem, and I think that is something which is down to people like me, but also people that do research data management and use the tools. Need to propagate the message that when we're talking about FAIR, what it does or what it enables is a far better situation for their own research. The open data scenario obviously is a big deal. That will come, I think, in the US in the same way that it comes in Europe, and you need other things to enable that, which is why the kind of development of rewards. So you have to give the researchers something to make their data fair, and in principle benefit from doing that, and also benefit from sharing it. Those are the real challenges, and I think I was working for some time with the European Open Science Cloud, and this was always one of the challenges there, because what are the real benefits for doing this other than a warm fuzzy feeling? Researchers need something else, because they're not metricized on how they manage their own data, and neither, and it's fair to say, neither are research infrastructures.
Okay, thank you, John. I think we'll have to move on at that point. So thanks very much, John, again. We'll stay on for any more questions at the end. Over now to Marcus, who's going to come over into Europe and a view from Germany. And I need right, here we go. It's actually there. I have them. Perfect. Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Markus Kubin, and I work for the Helmholtz-Zentrum Berlin and the Helmholtz Metadata Collaboration. Today, I have the honor to talk about the RDM strategies for photon and neutron facilities in Germany. Thanks for the organizers for welcoming this talk here. So here's a brief outline of my talk. I will quickly shine some light on the photon and neutron research landscape in Germany. And second, on national RDM strategies in Germany. And third, on those in the Helmholtz Association in Germany. So let's have a look at photon and neutron research facilities and related RDM initiatives in Germany. In Germany, we have various photon and neutron large-scale facilities ranging from the Petra 3, Flash, Cara, Bessie 2, and Elbe light sources, and the Delta operated by TU Dortmund, as well as the MLZ neutron source in our facility in Munich. And if we look at this map from a different perspective, we see that most of these are operated by Helmholtz centers in the Helmholtz Association, namely DESI, KIT, HZB, HCDR, Forschungszentrum Jülich, and Herion. So the research landscape in Germany can be subdivided largely into two groups, the non-university research and those in institutions of higher education. There's also industrial research, but I don't want to go into detail. And the largest non-university research organization is the Helmholtz Association, and you've just seen they're operating most of the large-scale facilities for photon and neutron research in Germany. Right, there's other non-university research where we have lots of user groups, and they also have own laboratories. And universities and institutions of higher education also have many user groups coming to these large-scale facilities. They also operate their own laboratories, and some even operate large-scale facilities like Delta Air or MLZ in Munich. What are the relevant RDM initiatives for photon and neutron research in Germany? They range from international to national, down to institutional or organizational RDM units and initiatives. On the international level, we have, for example, the SPANSIC interest group at the RDA. We have had EXPANS and PANOSC in the OSC. There's Digital Leaps. We will probably hear about this later. Then on the national level, we have the NFDI. I will go into detail in a few minutes with consortia like Daphne for NFDI. I will also quickly talk about ARUM data, and on the organizational level about the platform HMC for the Helmholtz Association, as well as the Rocket program. So let's have a look at the national RDM strategies. The biggest national initiative or strategy is the German National Research Data Infrastructure, the NFDI. It aims at creating a permanent digital repository of knowledge in Germany regarding respecting the FAIR principles and thereby shaping the future of RDM in Germany. It has 26 discipline-specific consortia and the base for NFDI for general overarching topics, and embraces also all kinds of scientific disciplines, including the photon and neutron communities.
The funding of up to 90 million euros annually until 2028 underlines the importance of this program in Germany. As I said, there are a number of consortia within the NFDI. One of them, particularly important for this community, is Daphne for NFDI. It embraces photon and neutron communities and has the goals to improve the metadata capture of experimental data by the use of user-driven online logbooks. To second, establish a community repository of processed data and analysis code to enable data and software reuse in the communities. And third, to develop, curate, and deploy user-developed analysis software and portals to enable the reuse of analysis software in the communities. As you can see on this slide, Daphne is well integrated with other consortia within the NFDI, but I don't want to go into detail here for time reasons. Another framework program I would like to mention is ERUM, Exploring the Universe and Matter. It is funded by, it's a framework program funded by the Federal Ministry of Education and Research, BMDF in Germany, and it has several action plans. One of them, so to say, the digital agenda of ERUM is ERUM Data. It has several strategic aims, which are in alignment with strategies of NFDI, EOSC, GoFair, RDA, ranging from networking to expanding the digital competences in research and strengthening transfer and communication. The thematic fields funded herein are research data management, federated digital infrastructures, and software and algorithms. So I think this is correct to mention here. And also the funding of up to 100 million euros until 2030 shows quite substantial relevance financially in Germany. The concrete measures in the facilities or in the universities are funded via a complex PRISMA process. So I've shown you that most large-scale facilities in photon and neutron research in Germany are located or operated by the Helmholtz Association. So let's have a look at the RDM strategies here. This is a slightly different map where you can see all these numbered bubbles are involvements of Helmholtz centers in NFDI consortia, and the Helmholtz Association is represented in most NFDI consortia. To give a prominent example here, the Daphne for NFDI consortium is represented where the red bubbles are, and those are exactly those centers operating photon and neutron large-scale facilities. So there's strong overlap between the national and the organizational RDM strategies. And right, another an organizational example in the Helmholtz Association for the digitization initiative is the Helmholtz Incubator. It has 5 strategic platforms for the digitization in Helmholtz. And one of them is HMC, the Helmholtz Metadata Collaboration, which I'm working for. In HMC, we have 6 hubs, one for each research field. We have 6 research fields in Helmholtz, representing roughly the disciplines. And we're working at the interface between infrastructure and research communities. What are we doing here? We have 3 key strategic areas we're following. The first is assessing and monitoring the state of fair data across Helmholtz. And 2 examples here are, for example, our survey activities and a dashboard approach where we look into open and fair data in Helmholtz. if you're interested in that, you can come to my talk tomorrow in block number 5 or to the poster session tonight. Second key strategic area is to facilitate the connectivity of Helmholtz research data. For example, with the Helmholtz knowledge graph. And third, we're working on transforming metadata recommendations into implementations. We therefore have the annual HMC project call, where we fund projects for up to 2 years. And another example are our training activities. There's a last organizational initiative or program I would like to mention quickly. This is funded for 3 years in Helmholtz, the Rocket program, with a scope to further develop remote access and automation in a specific use case, which is about operando experiments of catalytic processes with 3 photon sources in Helmholtz, BESI 2, Petra 3, and Cara. It involves 4 Helmholtz centers and tries to implement standard interfaces, namely OFIT and SICOP, for example, which will later, so this whole program will later serve as a blueprint to make developments transferable to other techniques in Helmholtz and beyond. So with this, I would like to come to my conclusions here. We have several large-scale facilities in Germany. Most of them are operated within Helmholtz, while the user groups are distributed over Germany. We have national initiatives like the NFDI and its consortia shaping the RDM strategies nationally for photon and neutron research. And initiatives like HMC and the Helmholtz Association play a key role in aligning RDM strategies with the photon and neutron communities. With this, I would like to acknowledge a few people who have supported me in preparing this presentation, my colleagues in HMC and HMC Hub Meta, and you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are running a little behind, but any quick question? I mean, I have a quick question. It's a very complicated landscape. So how does, for example, HMC work with Daphne, work with other, with Rocket? How do they actually not do the same thing and fit together?
Yeah, I think that those are strategically disjunct programs or initiatives, but there's a strong overlap in personnel working in one and the other programs to always have aligned the contents wherever there's overlap. And you just saw, I mean, the Helmholtz centers are involved in most NFDI consortia. We have a prominent example here, Heike, working in both of the HMC and Daphne. Right. Okay, thank you. And with that, I will hand over to Heike. We now have 3 relatively, hopefully short presentations on various tools that have been developed for FAIR in these projects and elsewhere. So firstly, we'll start with Heike, who's going to be looking at the work around data management plans. There we go. Okay, thank you. Over to you.
Okay. There's the clock also. But yeah, my name is Heike Görzig. I'm also from the Helmholtz Center in Berlin, and I was part of the Expanse project and was responsible here for the data management plans. So in the Panels and Expanse project, we had 3 deliverables that we organized that they were building up on each other. So first, the panels, the DMP template had to be created, and then and here we try to define a discipline-specific DMP with defining purposes for DMP and also defining related information requests. And the second one was where does the information come from and how can the answers be facilitated. And the third one was about demonstrating possible technical solutions. So the DMP requirement we analyzed were we need DMPs for reports and exposure mostly for reports of what happens in research data management. So about infrastructure usage, for example, the funders needed a report. The RDM team might need a report, and also some notifications. Then we hit some tasks about validations and also data curations. So what we did, we took the RDMO template because it was very fine granular and could ask fine granular questions about especially data curation and validations. And and also we needed this template then for already told about. Okay, and then we had the shock. We had like 115 questions, and okay, they can still be improved, but we needed a solution for this. Yeah, so we said, okay, we need to reuse as much information as possible, and had an approach and said, okay, where does the information first appear? So we analyzed the research life cycle. Then who knows about the information? Is it a person? Is it an IT system? So we looked at the roles related to it and the IT systems. And then we said, okay, how can the answers be guided or the answers be semi-automated? Can we use select lists? Can we have other dependencies between the questions? Okay, the first thing was, okay, we had then the PAN data research lifecycle that was already from previous projects, when we said, okay, which type of information appears in which part of the PAN data research lifecycle and which related IT systems are there. And then in the next step, we said, okay, we have different DMP phases. And here I want to point out the phase 0, because this is where the facility knowledge comes into play, like the instrument scientists, the RDM team, where we have rather stable information that is already there before a project starts, and is changing very little. Okay, for this we created another table for the next deliverable and said, okay, this is a question: when does the information appear? Where does it come from? And who is finally responsible to answer this question? And then in the next deliverable, then we created like then some a structure with the IT systems, how they relate with each other. And in the first thing was a proposal system, where in the first step we can relate some information. And then we also said, okay, we need if we have this stable knowledge, we need some kind of a facility central knowledge base to bring this information together. And here in the PANOS facilities, this implementation has taken place. So here we have the user office, where the first information is coming from on the left side. And on the right side, we have the more stable information about like facility information that holds some license information, for example, or then very instrument specific information. This is now in JSON files. So as we, so the idea is, okay, and this information then was transported to the data stewardship wizard. So we had like 2 different data management planning groups, softwares, and questionnaires involved here. So the RDMO and the data stewardship wizard that helped us a lot here. Yes. Okay, and then so this is now what we could do maybe in future, and say, okay, here we have like some software tools, some local IT systems, data sets we can get some information from the beginning. We need to retrieve this information maybe from a repository. We can then map this to different information requirements as there are the reports, or maybe there is a standard where we can export the information to. We can then use the information that has been like reworked and put then this again to our central knowledge base about the more or less static information about these about these instruments, for example, so that we can, for example, finally have a database about instrument where we have the information about what data sets do they produce, with which configuration, for example, and how can we validate the data sets produced are as they have been planned to be, and that they then can, for example, go into automated workflows. So this is somehow the idea. Okay, so yeah, I present what I presented now. We had these questionnaires, we had this workflow, how we want to go on with the origin, where does the information come from, possible, how we can, ideas for possible implementation for these active DMPs. In the PANOSC, we had this already implemented parts of this. Yeah, and then the next step would be, that is in the future, how can we have this automated filling of DMPs in the central knowledge base? Yeah, this was. Yeah, and yeah, and thanks to the whole expansive PANOSC team that made it possible.
Okay, I think we quick. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. In an academic setting, we often see that DMPs are not really actively consulted during the course of a research work. I wonder how and what kind of role, actually, how active role these DMPs play in the core facilities.
I mean, for now, it's basically for now, it's basically a requirement of the funder. Some facilities had made the DMPs obligatory, but normally it's more like a reporting tool now.
And when do you prepare one at the beginning, I believe, and one at the end, or DMP?
It depends. There are some that have to prepare one at the beginning, and others after a couple of months.
And what happens actually during the course of an experiment, let's say, or the research work? DMPs are actively consulted or not?
I haven't heard any activities around that. So it might be. I don't know.
Thank you.
I think this is relatively new in this space, and I don't think we've had a lot of experience on how DMPs get used in facilities as yet. I mean, Heike is kind of trailblazing on this, but it's certainly not universal in facilities science to have DMPs. So I think it's a bit of feeling. I mean, I foresee it that there's an awful lot of metadata that we need to collect for fair data, which is hard to get because it's very much the specific stuff that is in the head of the experimenter, and this is probably a good mechanism for being able to provide a vehicle for capturing some of that, so we can get it out of notebooks and that sort of thing. So that's what I see for future with DMPs. Sort of Heike agrees with that. Any other? Okay, well, thank you very much again, Heike. And now I think it's Steve.
Thank you, Brian. Do I press buttons?
We press escape.
Oh,
And then it should be here somewhere.
So I'd just like to say two things. I'm not Alejandra, for which I can only apologize. Second thing, I haven't got COVID. Right? I've been coughing and sneezing. I'm testing negative. I've very recently been vaccinated. I think it's a cold. Sure it is. Anyway, good. That was the most important thing I have to say, actually. So thank you very much. So this is Alejandra's talk on fair vocabularies, but I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about the PANET photon and neutron techniques ontology. Now, this work was a deliverable of the EXPANS grant, specifically task 3.2, to develop EU photon and neutron ontologies. It had a number of, let's say, originators, including Heike, Alejandra, and a lot of other contributors to the project. There are actually three ontologies, really, two big ones that we produced for this project. There's Nexus ontology version 1. There's the Planet ontology, which I'll talk about. They're both expressed in OWL. You can download these. You can open them from your Protégé ontology editor directly from the URLs. They're both nominally using the Perl.org namespace, but only one of them we've got the redirection set up for at the moment. So you can type the Perl.org identifier directly into a web browser, for example, and it'll give you something back. So yeah, have a look at those. There's documentation also on Zenodo. So those links should work. Okay, so what is it for? What is the purpose of the ontology? And this is just, I'm thinking only of the Planet ontology now. So this is an ontology to support catalog services, specifically findability or discoverability. It provides a controlled vocabulary of technique names with global persistent identifiers. It provides alternative names and annotations. So, for example, Wikipedia entries, so to help humans understand what these things are. It's based on very simple class-subclass relationships, which we'll come back to. Because it's expressed in OWL, you can, if you want, expand it by adding extra relationships and semantic mappings to other concepts in other vocabularies. And the main kind of use case really is summed up, I think, by this sentence. Okay, so to take an example, if we have a data set in a catalog, we want to tag it as MAD, which is shorthand notation for multi-wavelength anomalous diffraction. So the system will realize that MAD is an alternative name for multi-wavelength anomalous diffraction. It would look up the persistent identifier for that term and would tag it. But then you could search for that obviously directly or any of its alternative names, but you could also search for more general classes. So for example, you could search for X-ray probe. It'll give you all of the data sets which have a technique using an X-ray probe, which would be quite a lot at a synchrotron. You basically get back everything in the catalog. You could search for macromolecular crystallography, single crystal diffraction, atomic core excitations, for example. So any of these higher level superclasses of techniques you could search for by tagging at this more specific level. And just to let you know that these terms are machine resolvable. The individual terms within the ontology are machine resolvable. So this actually is the persistent identifier for multi-wavelength anomalous diffraction. If you put that into your web browser, it'll tell you all about it. So the design principles are, first of all, that the photon and neutron techniques are all classes. Everything in the ontology is a class, and in principle they're defined by their properties, but in order to keep things simple and focus on the immediate use case for searching, the only properties that the only relationships that we define are the class subclass relationships. So there are implied properties which define those relationships, but we don't actually say explicitly what they are, although we could do. There's no reason why those classes shouldn't be made more explicit in terms of their properties. We select top-level properties relating to the probe type, to the process, scattering, for example, absorption, to the functional dependence, so measuring as a function of position or energy or whatever, and the purpose. What is the experiment for? You get a molecular structure, electronic density of states or whatever. What is it actually for? What are you trying to do? So these sort of top level classes, I mean, you could think of adding more, but they give a kind of rudimentary description of what the technique's about. So yeah, that's what we do. So not all of the technique classes use all of those top level classes. So for example, we've got X-ray probe that is defined simply as being a subclass of photon probe. So this is a very simple sort of single inheritance picture. And you can see here, these are the top level classes that we have in the ontology, and we define the techniques in terms of those. So it's actually, I think, often easier to think about the possible individuals that are within the classes and think about sets of individuals. So you can see these kind of, Venn diagrams here, which show you single and multiple inheritance of superclasses in the ontology. So for example, we could start off with the set of techniques defined by a photon probe, and inside of that there's a subset or subclass which are the techniques defined by an X-ray probe. So this is a kind of single inheritance picture, but far more importantly, we can refine the classes by having multiple inheritance and saying that the techniques are subclasses of multiple superclasses. So for example, X-ray spectroscopy is a subclass of X-ray probe. It's also a subclass of spectroscopy. So you can think of giving you an intersection of these sets or multiple inheritance. So this gives us a much richer description, still very simple, but a much richer description. The downside is that we're moving away from a single sort of taxonomy, from a simple tree structure into something which can only be described by a graph. So if you try and make a tree, it's going to be horrible, because these classes are going to appear in multiple places within the tree. And to show you what the graph actually looks like, this is the Panet ontology on BioPortal, which we've heard quite a lot about in the last couple of days, and it shows the sort of inheritance graph, or the subclass superclass relationships between the various building blocks that make up the technique. And this is one that describes angle resolve photoemission spectroscopy. So in fact, if we tagged a data set with angle resolve photoemission spectroscopy, so I've not got much voice left, so you'd be able to find the data set by searching for at least 15 different terms plus their alternate names. So it's really sort of expanding out the search to find the things that you are interested in. So how is it used? So it's already been incorporated into the ICAT data catalog, I think schema version 5. It's in the Panos search API, the Expands training portal. I think the Diamond Publications database, somebody said it was, but I'm not entirely sure about that. And there are various, I mean, it's on ontology, so you can use it any way you like. It's not tied to any particular technology in any way. So Heike, for example, is interested in incorporating it into Nexus, which is, as a community, that's our most important metadata model. It fits nicely into DataCite, for example. So there are lots of different ways of using it. And then finally, in order to keep this thing alive, so our deliverable was like version 1 of the ontologies. We didn't want to let it die, so we've actually managed to pass the Nexus ontology onto the Nexus NIAC, which is great. So we don't have to do any more work on it. Well, Heike does. I don't. And we have a sustainability group for the Panet ontology, which meets every few weeks. So that's kind of a focus group, but we also have a GitHub site. So anybody in the community can request changes, can request new terms, and we'll kind of discuss them at our meetings. We still got quite a lot of work to do, to be fair, before we really, implement lots of new techniques, but we are getting there. We have a plan. we have a sustainable level of resourcing, which will allow us to take this forwards into the future. And I think that was my last slide. Yes, it was. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. Any quick questions? Any questions? Oh, I need to do this.
And it was Rolf who put this into the ICAT catalog.
No, just one remark you said, planned or suggested for data site, you could put it in now being used, because the standard way to use that in data site is to tag a data set or whatever as a subject.
Yeah.
And the subject has sub-properties for schema and schema URL, and that is exactly the way how you would tag the exact term in, for instance, in a Panot ontology.
Yeah. So I think in data site you can put anything in subject, really, can't you? If you have an ontology, you can refer to a term in the ontology. So it's very,
as I said, so the subject property, which corresponds more or less to keywords, is by definition free text, but you can use controlled vocabularies by linking to the schema that you are applying to that particular subject.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, we'll pick up the microphone. Thank you. And now for the final technology talk to Andre. If I can find it. Here we go. Yes. You know which person?
Please let me know.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrei Vukolov, Electra Synchrotron Trieste, and this is really a brief report about the applications of persistent identifiers in photon and electron synchrotron and free electron laser facilities. Well, while you're seeing the role of PIDs in the FAIR model of the data sharing, it's just I will have a brief report about the questions and the lessons we learned from implementing PIDs at Electra Synchrotrone, because the first is that the beamline scientists and the people working on the free electron lasers are not so, let's say, striving to do an exact ontology and implementation of the PIDs in a place. So for them, it is somehow better to delegate everything to some service provider. But now the landscape of the usage of the generalized free electron and synchrotron facilities. Sorry, what's just a sec. Yeah. Oh, okay. Sorry. So it's the practical landscape of use at persistent for which the persistent identifiers are used at Electra Synchrotrone, and I highlighted them, some of them, which were in active usage by the scientists themselves, but not a project office or another part of the facility. So obviously the publications are in leaders, but also it was actually, let's say, surprising that the software and people are becoming more and more important for being persistently identified, especially in context when the people are moving from one facility to another, and the affiliation is a subject for being tracked. And also the samples for us, it's not a huge problem, but it's still a problem, because identification of the samples is becoming as important as we need to track the let's say the inheritance of a sample origins from the different facilities. The technology is amazing. I am trying to Yes, I'm trying to switch the slide, but it switches here. I don't understand what's happening. Okay. Okay, so there's a brief diagram of the let's say underrated and leading in usage the type of PIDs. And the another fact that we discovered, it's from overall landscape, also in the project expanse, that the experiment also is, which is also needed to be persistently identified, experimental proposals, is becoming even more important than in the landscape than the sample and even the people. Because on the experiment, there is needed a provenance on which including also, as Heike and Marcus said, the data management plan and policy which should be used, treating the data obtained from such an experiment. So here is a landscape. And here is also a landscape of the exact types of PIDs which are in active usage. And we could say that most popular is obviously DOI, which is minted for absolutely everyone, everything, and obviously everyone. The bespoke implementation in kind of ORCID is also actually the second leading part, because the people are using it to not to track, but just to identify and represent themselves. Handle and sample international generalized sample number are in active usage, but it's subject to be improved. Oh, sorry. And also there are two specialized kinds of PIDs used now. The first is software heritage identification number. It's not explicitly listed here, but it is becoming in active usage to prove the inheritance and the version history of the old software. Because, for example, at Elettra Synchrotrone, we have some software written 30 years ago, and this software need to be identified. So we use software heritage identifier as an identifier which is most closer compatible with Git, with a version control system. And also there is a short experimental segment of usage of hash-based identifiers to identify the selected data sets. For some highlights, there are just several points mentioned on the slide. The main thing is that the PIDs mostly point not to the actual data, but to the bunch of metadata or to access control authentication solution, which is somehow maybe a problem for accessing the open data. Because once you should prove yourself, or for example, to activate your ORCID, it could create, let's say, not the provenance, but the access problem. Because, for example, in this case, you cannot access your data using API. And the another point is that research infrastructure is yielding the provenance of their data to the persistent identification provider. So it is not a problem, but it's a task to transfer the data about, again, the metadata about the provenance chain to the PID provider, which is not actually anytime possible. So next highlight. And the most important problem we discovered from using of PIDs is that now the PIDs could not be used as an indexation solution. So we have just a number, we have maybe even a hash of the actual data, but we cannot search using the PID as an indexer. And there could be not a problem, but another task to create a lookup tables to activate the knowledge graphs based on the PIDs as nodes. For example, as absolutely everyone saw, inherited words and search terms in context of PIDs for pointing and the exact node in the knowledge graph. And here are the practical improvement vectors for the PID usage in the community. So it's again about the PID graphs, which could be a part of the knowledge graphs we create through creation of the gateways between these graphs, but they are not explicitly defined still, and it's a task for being improved. And the next important task is to improve the data protection and provenance, because there are some cases detected of actual not attacks, but tries to let's say inject a suspicious URI inside DOIs. So the data protection is still important tasks. And the proliferation of the PIDs over the raw data is still a problem, at least for the facilities like synchrotron Electra, because the beamline scientists are not really want to delegate the provenance of the data they obtained from the instrument immediately after the data were obtained. So here's a landscape and a brief description of the landscape of persistent identifiers used. Thank you. Thank you very much.
One quick question while we set up the next. Apologies, we are looking like we're going to overrun a little bit. So.
Thanks, Ryan. That was great. I really appreciated that. I'm a little curious about your idea of indexing the PIDs rather than taking a PID graph and putting that somewhere that somebody can query, and I guess I just don't follow it. Could you just expand on that a little bit?
It's about using the persistent identifier as the, let's say, something analog to hash key in the, for example, distributed hash table. So you are putting your persistent identifier directly into the network infrastructure, and this infrastructure will automatically at least extract for you the metadata linked to this persistent identifier, as it has a node in the knowledge graph. And but still, the main difficulty here is that it is implementation dependent. So we don't know how exactly should be implemented this, for example, distributed hash table. This is a problem, and this is a vector for a further improvement.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we come to our final section. Apologies, we are overrunning a little bit, so but hopefully you can hang on just a few more minutes. So Majid or Patrick. Patrick first. You are Oscars, aren't you?
That's good. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, or good evening. Can I start? Yeah, sorry. It works. Okay, my name is Patrick Fuhrmann. I'm from Germany, and as you know, the infrastructure now in Germany very well. I'm from DAISY, and you learned that this is part of the Helmholtz. I'm involved in the NFDI, which was nicely explained before. in Daphne and in Punch, and I'm observer in the EOSC Association. Good. So this is laying the ground for my presentation. Unfortunately, Sophie couldn't make it, so she prepared the presentation for me. And I would like to join everyone in thanking Brian for preparing the session. Good. Please keep in mind, I only have 5 minutes, and so this is only about FAIR in EOSC in terms of the European Commission. Everything else I'm not discussing, but there's a lot going on top. Okay, so just as a reminder, 2018, 5 years ago. Yeah, 5 years ago, the Commission stopped funding individual small projects, and they decided to give an incentive in grouping in the science area. So, and in the end, they were successful, and 5 projects came out of this initiative. It was they called themselves clusters. It was on social science and humanity, shock, and it was on life science, it was on environmental science, and it was on high energy physics and astrophysics and astroparticle physics. And the one we are interested in is PANOSC and EXPANSE, which was on photon and neutron sciences. So, and over time, and this was part of the deliverables, they actually grouped themselves like a family of families, and they became like a group on top of those 5 clusters, which was important, as we will learn in a minute. But so this is just their web page, and but they had regular meetings, and because it was all about fair data, and although they have not much in common, in the end, the way to treat fair data should be the same cross cluster. Okay, so this is what I just said. These are the 5 projects, and there's something I didn't mention in parallel to those projects are the science communities, but in parallel we have the E infrastructures. So this is GEON, this is EGI, this is EODAT, and this is OpenAir. Yeah. So, and the Commission in parallel. So this is not correct. This is not starting 2023, but those 2 projects belong here. So the Commission said that they do not want to leave the communities alone. So they were kind of forcing the infrastructures to care about those communities. In addition, they have to run their software and their analysis somewhere. Yeah. So, and here we didn't discuss any hardware yet or any facility to run the software. And this is EGI ACE. EGI ACE was supposed to train the infrastructures to live with virtual access. Yeah. So that means the European Commission is paying the infrastructures, and the communities could use them freely. Okay. So, but this was just training, and we will learn what this is need for. Okay, now coming back to those 5 projects and 5 clusters. So they prepared a proposal for a call, which they were shaping in the end to the European Commission, in order to consolidate all those initiatives within the projects into one. Yeah. Okay, and this is now called OSCARS, and it's going to start 1st of January next year. The objective of OSCARS is to consolidate the many outcomes of those projects, and we come to this in a second. But on top of this, they want to give the communities time to adapt to those objectives. Yeah, and we will see how they kind of try to manipulate those communities to do that. And last but not least, it should be a high objective, but unfortunately, it's not that. It's a little bit too complicated. They want to use the synergies between all those clusters, yeah, and to find a common goal. Good. There's something I didn't mention yet, is on the follow-up on the EOSC future and the EGI ACE is that the Commission again is trying to find a way to have those communities run in a certain coordinated way. So what they came up with is they defined the so-called EOSC nodes. Yeah. So it takes a long time to explain what a node is. At the EOSC symposium in Madrid a couple of weeks ago, the Commission asked us, what do you think a node is? So this gives you an idea how well this node is defined. However, what they did is, in order to make sure that we can run all those analysis, to run all the analysis somewhere. So what they did is they have they came up with EOS procurement. So this is they have 3 lots. So what they want is they want to pay companies or whoever is applying for this procurement to provide the hardware and provide the computing and the storage. Okay, and every day we are now expecting an outcome for the procurement. So who is actually winning the procurement? Who is actually doing this in the future for us? Okay, so, and this is something we know what's going to happen because this is in our hand, but there's something we expect to happen in 2027. And this is kind of more exciting, yeah? Because up to here, it is more, you know, if you read through those, it's not really exciting. Yeah? So we have to consolidate, we have to find ourselves, and we have to find the synergies. But here, what we expect here is that the entire infrastructure is now functional. Yeah, that means you know ChatGPT, but what we expect here is that all this will lead to, for example, a large foundation models. Yeah, that means we can use the infrastructure here in order to use artificial intelligence, and everything that you learn from Heike and from everyone before is all the data can now be used by machines, and hopefully this will end up in foundation models. However, we expect that here we are working together, but here we hope that the Commission is trying to fund our particular needs more than here. Okay, good. So I think because of time, I can skip this because you already learned the outcomes of PANOS and expense. I only had some examples here. So we have been working on finding our data sets through the OAI PMH in SciCat and ICAT. And we have something Majid is, I think, talking about in a minute. It is something which is a virtual research environment. It's called VISA. All of this is kind of continued through MOUs Majid is caring about. Good. So talking about OSCARs. OSCARs is, as I said, starting in January. And the Commission tried not to do the same mistake they did in the past. So what they're doing is they gave us money for consolidation of what we did in the past. However, they want the communities to involve themselves a little bit more. So they spent 18 million of the 25 million in open calls. So starting with the consolidation is on 2 areas. First of all, they want to organize competence centers. Competence centers in the definition of the competence center in our context is it will implement, it will support newcomers, it will be sharing of best practices, and so whatever you can imagine. So the competence centers will be done by community, will be done by cluster. There will be not one huge competence center, but there will be one competence center by cluster. And of course, the goal of this entire project is to exploit cross-cluster synergies. Yeah? So, and there are only the 3 mentioned here. We have been working on together with other clusters like Escape, the PAN data lake, so to deliver data across all our facilities, direct access to the data. How can we do that? How can we simplify that? And the container registry and even a workflow hub. And then what would be a great achievement would be working on virtual research environment. They have been mentioned a lot yesterday and today, and we have been starting working on this in EOS Future through the science projects. Okay, good. And then coming to the more interesting part, which is the open calls. The Commission forced us to spend 18 million out of the 25 million in OSCARs for open calls. So everyone is eligible who was eligible for Horizon Europe. The goal of those projects is to have them run for 1 or 2 years, and the maximum amount of money we want to spend per project is 250K. It is appreciated. It was appreciated if it would be cross-cluster, but it's not mandatory. And because we all want to apply ourselves again to those projects, there is an external entity which is deciding whether this project is approved or not. Good. And the consequence is that, and this is something the Commission has been insisting in, that the long tail of science not really involved in those 5 clusters can apply for those. Yeah. This is a great opportunity for them. If we divide the money we have by 5, for our community, there will be about the amount of money we had for expense. This is an opportunity for us, but it's not a gift. Yeah, that means we have to pull ourselves together and deliver those proposals in time. So otherwise, the money is lost to the other clusters. So there was a brainstorming last week already during the LEAPS plenary in Paris, close at Soleil, and they already came up with 30 and more projects within a couple of minutes. Examples are beamline scheduling, machine learning again. The prerequisite will be more standardization and software catalogs and more machine learning on open data. Good. So in a sense, the PAN research data management is benefiting from a wider science cluster endeavor. It is not guaranteed, because if you make something broader, it could be that you're losing things, but we hope that this will be a success for us as well. The implementation phase will see fair practices streamlined in our facilities. This is the hope. Yeah. Let's see how that goes. We are at the beginning of leveraging open data. So again, that is our hope. Important is that in the future, it has to be machine readable. It has to be machine learning is the key to all those. Yeah? And therefore, it's extremely important what Heike has been talking about and the others, that you have to have proper ontologies. The machines have to understand our data, yeah? Especially for the large foundation models. And then, of course, to mention Majid's great effort to take everything we did and put them into MOUs to continue the facilities to work together. Okay, many thanks to Majid. Okay, that was it. I think I stayed in time, I hope.
Thank you, thank you. So again, apologies. So we have just one more quick talk from Majid. And then hopefully we'll be finished by about +2. And then any questions there? I've got questions for you. We get out of this one.
So I'll try to be short. My talk is really in the continuation of what Patrick just said. As he told, after the different clusters, it's okay here. Yeah. As Patrick said, we have been organized in 5 clusters to apply for EOS projects, but behind the scenes, we try to organize ourselves without the EOS projects. And then here comes LEAPS. LEAPS stands for League of European Accelerator-Based Photon Source, which is an association gathering all the photon sources over Europe. There is also LENS, but I'm representing here LEAPS. I talk only about LEAPS. I'm presenting slides which more or less have been presented last week by Paul Miller. I thank him because he is the spokesperson for IT people involved in LEAPS. I will not go through all the projects we are involved in. Some of them have been already said by Patrick. There is one which we are trying to apply for. This is the last one. And as you see, we are almost all there. And which is about, let's say, try to go towards cutting edge technologies to bother with the energy transition, let's say. And one of our major outcomes we are happy with is now, as all our heads in LEAPS are saying that data is important, we published a LEAPS data strategy, and you can go and see it in the European Physics Journal. And we are trying now to push our heads in all our facilities to endorse this and to say that it's not only words, they will really give us money to continue our work. One of our other things we came with to continue in this IT working group of LEAPS is to organize ourselves in our working group to continue working and collaborating with European projects or not. And we thank a lot HIFIS Federation IT Service, because now they provided us with collaborative tools. We have mailing list, we have GitLab repo, we have a Mattermost channel, which is my Slack one, and we have also a web site where you can go and see all what we have already done and what we are working on. And now I'm coming to the MOUs Patrick talked about. We are in the process of achieving the setup of, let's say, formal collaborations with MOUs signed by our heads to be sure that the work we will continue to do is official. So there's one about fair data management where we took almost all the topic that have been addressed during the panels and expanse projects, and we are organizing ourselves around these topics in regular bi-weekly meetings where people can come from LEAPS or not and give talks about things they are already doing or things they want to do, and we are continuing collaboration this way. As we see in this MOU, we are almost all there. And the second collaboration is about visa. What you see on the right side is a schema that we defined during the expense projects, looking forward to some kind of platform, let's say technology agnostic. What you see on top is Visa. Visa is the remote data analysis platform that's have been developed at ILL. It's our reference platform. This does not mean that it's the only one that can be used, because the most important things is what is shown on the other layers. We are looking forward to have APIs and to be able to use remote desktop Jupyter notebooks, OpenStack Kubernetes, all these words you hear about in many different places. And these are also the topics we are addressing in bi-weekly meetings, trying to harmonize our way of implementing our remote data analysis platforms. And looking for the future, so we are trying not to continue working only to the LEAPS community. We are trying to find connections with lands, not on community, industry. We met, for example, the HDF5 consortium, and we're working with them in order to include something we developed for compression. This is one example. We are also working with Dectris, which is one of the main company providing the textures to our facilities. We want, as have been already said, to have broader adoption of all the panels and expense outputs. And last thing is to say that we are open to other collaborations. So our working group, even if it's organized in the frame of LEAPS, we decided to mimic, let's say, RDA, because we are organizing different, what we call special interest group, which can bother with different topics, and it's open to everyone. You are welcome if you have some topic you want to share with us and collaborate with us. And I'm done.
Thank you very much. Any quick questions? Well, okay. Well, Uwe, quick question. And
Yeah, thanks for the presentations. It's more of a remark. Patrick mentioned that we have seen a lot of virtual research environments here at the conference, but I think it was not that much that I would have expected. So there's a lot of infrastructure and data management issues, but to combine the data with the activities on the platforms is not that much, but I appreciate that it's a topic here.
Thank you, and thank you for hanging on. Indicative of my bad chairing, but also I think indicative of the amount of work that's going on in this space, that there's just so much to cram in. So I just thank you very much. I'm sure we can hang around, people can ask questions afterwards and follow up afterwards. But so thank you for hanging on, and I hope you found it interesting, and have a good evening. Thanks.